Hello, my beautiful people, and welcome back to my channel. This is Mrs. Venti speaking, and this is video 2 of the sum and difference of cubes. We're using Platinum Math, grade 10. We're doing exercise 15 on page 23, and since this is part 2, we're doing the second half of the exercise, which is question 10 to 18. All right, question 10 says 27C6D3 minus 1. Now, remember, I'm going to start from the beginning. I'm assuming you haven't watched video 1. Let's say we are given with a question. The first thing you need to be able to do is identify whether or not you've got a cubes, right? So the first thing we look at, we're going to look at term 1. And in term 1, we have 27, which is 3 cubed. C6, which is C squared to the power of 2. And D3, which is D to the power of 3. So over here we know that the green section is a cube. On our right hand side we've got the 1, which is going to be 1 times 1 times 1, or 1 cubed. So we've got 2 cubes. Great. So we know we've got cubes. We look at our side. Our sign is a minus, so we know that we have a difference of cubes. Now that we've identified our sum as being a difference of cubes, we can attempt to answer it. So we know that our answer is going to have 2 brackets. The first is going to be a binomial with 2 terms, and the second a trinomial with 3 terms. The second thing we look at are the signs. So we know that our binomial, the sign is going to be minus because it is a minus in the question. So in our first sum, in our first bracket, we keep the sign, or the sign stays the same, right, as in the question. In our second bracket, the trinomial, our first sign is going to be the opposite of this minus, so we're going to have a plus. So from here to here, we are going to change the sign. Whatever is in the first bracket, the second bracket is going to be the opposite. And our second sign in the trinomial is always plus. All right, so now we've got our 2 brackets and we've got the signs that we need inside of them in order to make it work. Let's see what do we do with the first bracket. In order to get the 2 terms in the first bracket, for the first term, we are going to say 27C6D3, that's this term, and we are going to cube root it. So the cube root of 27 is 3. C6 is going to be C squared, and D to the power of 3 is just D. Our second term, we're going to do the same. We're going to do the cube root of 1, which is 1. And that is how we get the first bracket. Now, in order for us to get the second bracket, we are going to work from the first bracket. So our first term, we're going to look at the first term in the first bracket in the answer. So we're going to say 3C squared D squared, and that gives us what's in the first term. So 3 squared is 9. C squared to the power of 2 is going to be 2 times 2, which is C4, and D1 times 2 is D2. That is our first term. Our second term, we're going to take the first term, 3C2D multiplied by 1. So we say 3C squared D times 1, and that gives us 3C squared D. And then our third term is going to be this 1 over there, and it's going to be 1 squared, which is 1. And that, my dear friends, is your final answer. This is how you answer this question. Okay, I hope that jogged your memory. Let's continue. Question 11. 125 x to the power of 3 plus 27. So I'm identifying. I know that 125 is 5 cubed, x cubed. 27 is 3 cubed. So I've got cubes, and this is not the difference, but it is the sum of cubes because I've got a plus sign. So my answer's got 2 brackets. My first bracket is a binomial. My second bracket is a trinomial. Binomial sign is a plus because I've got a plus in the question. trinomial, we have a minus, which is opposite of plus, and we have a plus because it's always plus. Okay, first bracket. Cube root of 125 is 5. X to the power of 1. Cube root of 27 is 3. Okay, term 1, second bracket. That's going to be 5 squared is 25 x squared. Term 2, I'm going to have 5x times 3. 5 times 3 is 15x. And then last term, 3 squared is 9. And that is how I answer that question. Final answer, done. Next question. 18 m to the power of 12 plus 1. Now, if you remember what we said about the exponents is we divide them. So we're going to say 12 divided by 3 equals 4. So the cube root of 8m12 is going to be, cube root of 8 is 2. M to the power of 12 is going to be m4. Okay, so we got that. Now let's do our answer. Our answer is going to be 2 brackets, a binomial and a trinomial. First bracket is a plus because there's a plus in the question. Then I have a minus opposite of the plus and a plus because it's always plus. Okay, first number, cube root of 8m12 is going to be 2m4. And then the cube root of 1 is going to be 1. Alrighty, let's do our second bracket. 2m4 to the power of 2. 2 squared is 4. M, 4 times 2 is 8. 2m4 times 1 is 2m4. And lastly, 1 squared is 1. That's my final answer. All right, things are starting to look interesting. I have a fraction. So let's check. Is this fraction a cube? So let's look at the numerator. Our first number is 1. 1 is a cube, so that's correct. Our denominator is 27, which is 3 cubed. That's correct. And x cubed, that's correct. So our first term, which is a fraction, is a cube. Our second term, 8y cubed, is a cube. That's correct. And we've got a minus sign, so that means we have got a difference of cubes. Our answer is going to have 2 brackets. The first is going to be a binomial. The second is going to be a trinomial. So our sign in the binomial is minus because there's a minus in the question. We have plus, which is opposite of minus, and plus because it's always plus. Our first bracket, we're going to say, what is 1 over 27x cubed? Cube root of that, and that's going to be cube root of 1 is 1 over cube root of 27 is 3x. That's term 1, bracket 1. Cube root of 8y cubed is going to be 2y, and that is our first bracket. Pretty easy. So our first term in the second bracket is going to be this first term, 1 over 3x, and we're going to square it. So 1 squared is 1, 3 squared is 9, x squared is x squared, and that is our first term. For the second term, we're going to multiply those two. So we're going to say 1 over 3x multiplied by 2y over 1. So I'm going to say numerator times numerator. That gives me 2y over denominator times denominator. That gives me 3x. And then finally, I'm going to say 2y squared, which gives me 4y squared. And that, my friends, is your final answer. So we follow the exact same steps, but when we're working with a fraction, you check the numerator and the denominator for everything that you're doing. So we've got a number of fractions that follow. Let's try the next one. 8 over k cubed minus k cubed m6. Okay, so we know that our answer has got 2 brackets, binomial and a trinomial. Binomial is minus, trinomial is plus and plus. In our binomial, we are going to say 8 over k cubed cube rooted. So the cube root of 8 is 2, and the cube root of k cubed is k. So we have 2 over k. Then we're going to say cube root of, okay, I'll write it out, k cubed m6. We're going to do the cube root of that. So 3 divided by 3 is 1, and 6 divided by 3 is 2. And that is how we get our first bracket. Now for the second bracket, I'm going to say 2 over k squared. So 2 squared is 4, and k squared is k squared. Next up, we are going to do 2 over k multiplied by km squared. Now remember, this is over 1. So I know that when I'm working like this, I can cancel out. If I have a numerator and a denominator that are the same, they will then make 1. So the k's disappear, and what I have left in my numerator is going to be 2 . So I have 2m squared over 2 times 1 over 1. So I don't really need to write the over 1. I can just write 2m squared. And then finally, I want to say km squared to the power of 2. That becomes k2m4. And that's my final answer. Last fraction. 1 over 125 x cubed minus 8y9. So I know I've got a difference of cubes. I've got 2 brackets, binomial and a trinomial. Binomial is minus, trinomial is plus, and plus. Binomial. Okay, so I've got 1 as the cube root of 1 over 5x. Then my second one is going to be cube root of 8 is 2. Y, 9 divided by 3 is 3. All right. Term 1, bracket 2 is going to be 1 over 5x squared. 1 squared is 1. 5 squared is 25. X squared. Notice the x is on the side on its own, or it's part of the numerator. Okay. Next up, we have 1 over 5. Let's write this out. X times 2y cubed over 1. So technically the x is over there, so we can remove it over here. And then I'm going to say I can't simplify. Nothing cancels out. Numerator times numerator becomes 2xy cubed over denominator times denominator 5. And then finally, we have 2y cubed squared. So 2 squared is 4. Y, 3 times 2 is 6. And that's your final answer. All right. Now things are getting a little bit more interesting. Now, remember when we are looking at a sum, we know that we have the term because it's separated by a plus or a minus sign. When we have something in brackets, that is one term. So over here, we've got 2 terms. The first bracket is one term, and the number 1 is another term. So remember, when we're doing a sum or difference of cubes, we actually only have 2 terms separated by a plus or minus sign. Here we've got 2 terms, but our first term is a little bit more complex or involved. It's not just one letter, it's actually 2 separated by a plus sign, and it is cubed. So what I would suggest, one way of doing the sum is to substitute. Instead of having the whole number as it is, we can make this represented by x. So I'll rewrite this as x cubed minus 1. This seems more sensible. This is easier to see. So what we're going to do, we're going to take a longer way to answer the question, but it will be the easier way and you're less likely to make mistakes. Then I'm going to show you how to do it without the substitution, but you have to pay attention so you don't make mistakes. So let's start. We are saying that we've got 2 brackets. Our brackets are a binomial and a trinomial with the signs minus, plus, plus. Then we're going to say in our first bracket we've got x minus 1. In our second bracket we've got x squared plus x plus 1. Okay, that would be our answer. And then we are going to reverse the substitution. So everywhere that you see x, you are going to put the full bracket, 2a plus b. So what happens now is you are going to say 2a plus b and then it is still minus 1 multiplied by 2a plus b squared plus 2a plus b plus 1. And this is, first we solve the difference of squares, and then we first we solve the difference of cubes, and then we substituted back. So now we need to simplify. The first bracket is fine, that is as simple as it's going to get, but the second bracket has got a square over there, so we need to expand that square. So this means that our answer is going to be 2a plus b minus 1, and in our second bracket we are going to have 2a squared is going to be 4a squared. 2a multiplied by b is 2ab times 2 is 4ab. And then b squared. And then we are going to add the rest plus 2a plus b plus 1. Okay, now what are we looking at or for? We are going to look for like terms. Do we have any like terms? Now remember, you have to work in the bracket. So in this bracket there are no like terms. In this bracket there are no like terms. And therefore this is your final answer. Okay, have a look closely. We can remove these brackets over here, the green ones, and that's your final answer. Okay, now let's try the exact same question, but without the x substitution. So we know that our answer has got two brackets, a binomial and a trinomial, right? And we know that our binomial is separated by a minus sign, and our trinomial is going to have a plus and a plus. So let's start with our first term. 2a, we are literally saying 2a plus b cubed cube root. So we're going to cancel the cube root with that, and we're left with this. So we have 2a plus b. And the cube root of 1 is going to be 1. So that is our first bracket. Now, in our second bracket, we are going to say 2a plus b squared. That's going to be our first one. So I'm just going to write it as it is without expanding it yet. And then our middle term is going to be 2a plus b times 1. Just like that. And that leaves us with 2a plus b. Anything times 1, easy, right? And then lastly, we're going to have 1 squared, which is 1. Having done that, we can now expand, and we're going to say our first bracket, there's no changes necessary. So this becomes or stays 2a plus b minus 1. And that's going to be as simple as that bracket gets. Now for our second bracket, we are going to expand our light blue one. So 2a squared becomes 4a squared. 2a times b is 2ab times 2 is 4ab. And b squared is b squared. And the rest stays the same, plus 2a plus b plus 1. And that, my dear folks, is your final answer. So you'll see it's exactly the same as the one with the x. So you can choose which method works best for you. If it's simpler for you to use one variable instead of a whole bracket, then that's fine. But if you can do it without it, that's great. All right, let's try another one very similar to this one, where we have a bracket cubed. So we've got two brackets as our answer, a binomial and a trinomial. We know that our binomial has got a minus sign, and our trinomial is going to have a plus and a plus. So for our binomial, we're going to say the cube root of 8 is 2, and the cube root of our bracket is just going to be the bracket, because everything inside the whole bracket is cubed. So we just write what's inside the bracket. Okay, so now our first term is going to be 2 to the power of 2, which is 4. Our second term is going to be 2 times 3m minus n. So we're going to do distributive property. 2 times 3 is going to be 6m, and 2 times minus n is going to be minus 2n. And then our last term is going to be 3m minus n squared. And then normally we'd be finished here, but because of the square over here, we have to expand that. So our first bracket is as simple as it gets. We have 2 minus 3m minus n. Our second bracket is 4 plus 6m minus 2n plus. Now let us expand the square bracket. 3m squared is 9m squared. 3m times minus n is going to be minus 3mn, times 2 is minus 6mn, and then n minus n squared is positive n squared. And that, my dear friends, is your final answer. If you look, there are absolutely no like terms. Everything is different in the brackets, and therefore that is your final answer. Next question. We have got 2p plus q in brackets cubed minus p minus q in brackets cubed. So if I was to do a substitution, then this would be something like x cubed minus y cubed, because I've got two different types of variables inside the brackets. One is a plus, one is a minus, minus 2p, and one is 1p, so it's different. But we're not going to use the substitution method. We are going to use the question as is given. So we know that we've got two brackets, a binomial and a trinomial. Now, our binomial is going to be a minus, and our trinomial is going to be a plus and a plus. Let's see if we have enough space. Let's work on our first term. This whole term is cubed, so one of those is 2p plus q. And the same applies for over here. This whole term is cubed, so we've got p minus q over there in brackets. Okay, let's put them both in brackets. Okay, so I've got my first bracket sorted out. Now for my second bracket, it's going to be this squared. So it's going to be 2p plus q in brackets squared. My second one is going to be this times this. So if I write it out, I can literally say this is 2p plus q multiplied by p minus q. And then my third bracket is going to be p minus q squared. And that is the first layer of my answer. Okay, so I've put everything in the right places. Now, normally I'd be done, but instead of being done right now, I need to calculate. I need to expand, and then I need to simplify. So the first bracket, what I see in my first bracket is I have a minus sign. And so I'm going to use a distributive property over here, and I'm going to multiply that minus sign in. So I've got my first bracket is going to stay the same, 2p plus q, no changes there. And then I'm going to change the second bracket, minus p. Minus times minus is plus q. So that, my dears, is my first bracket. My second bracket, I want to expand. So 2p squared. 2 times 2 is 4p squared. And then the middle term is going to be 2p times q. It's 2pq times 2 is 4pq. And my sign is positive. And lastly, I've got q squared. All right. Next up, I'm going to add my green. So I'm doing the FOIL method. First with first, 2p times p gives me 2p squared. Outer with outer, 2p times minus q gives me minus 2pq. Inner with inner gives me plus pq. And last with last gives me minus q squared. All right. Next up, I'm going to do this plus sign over here. So I'm adding. So I'm out of space, but this is all one line. And we're going to do the orange bracket, which is going to be p squared minus 2pq plus q squared. And that is my second bracket. Now the next thing that I need to do is I need to look for like terms. So if I'm looking for like terms, I am looking for things that are the same. Looking in my first bracket, I've got p to the power of 1 and I've got p to the power of 1. Then I've got q and I've got q to the power of 1. So those are like terms I can add together. So my first bracket becomes 2p minus p is just p. Q plus q is 2q. And that's my first bracket. My second bracket, let's look for like terms. I've got p squared, then I've got p squared, and I've got p squared. So 4 plus 2 is 6, plus 1 is 7. I've got 7p squared. Next up, I've got 4pq. I've got minus 2pq. I've got plus pq. I've got minus 2pq. So 4 minus 2 is 2. 2 minus 2 is 0. So those all cancel out. So all I've got is plus 1pq. And then lastly, I have got q squared minus q squared gives me 0 and another q squared. So I've got plus q squared. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is your final answer. I hope that made sense. Watch it again if you need to have an explanation a second time. But all we have to do is follow the steps. The steps remain the same. Thank you everybody for watching. I hope that all of this was very helpful for you. I wish you all the best in your studies. And if you have any questions, go ahead and ask me. Please click on the like and subscribe so that you'll be notified of any new videos that are coming out. All the best in your studies. Bye-bye.